Good evening, everyone.
I'm back.
Evening.
I'm back up and running. I'm back up and running. Thanks, David.
You're welcome.
Hi, John.
Hi, Jan, David, and Gary, Jose.
David.
I hope everybody stayed indoors today as much as they could. It's
You
a
bet.
scorcher. It's a scorcher out there.
It is.
Hi, Lisa and Barbara, and Walter.
Hi.
Hi, Walter.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Walter.
Hey, Mark.
Good evening.
Hi, Mark.
Hello.
Hi, Mark.
Glad to be here.
Even though you're coming off vacation.
Everything's relative on that. Got to enjoy it.
Hey, Larry Butler.
Hello, Jeff. Others?
Hey, Larry.
Howdy, howdy.
Good evening, Alvarez and Chris Caperton.
Greetings.
Good evening, all.
All right, let's give everybody about another minute and then we'll get started. All right, so it's 7:01 and Jose's put up the agenda, so let's go ahead and get started. We got a lot going on tonight, have a lot packed into this meeting. Welcome everybody to the June 28, 2021 meeting of the Reston Comprehensive Plan Task Force. We have several updates. Then we're going to work through public art and the draft that's been circulated and updated, I believe a couple of times. Heritage Resources draft will go next. Then we'll get right back into remaining land use areas, starting with the Herndon TSA. Then we'll check and see if there's any other areas that haven't been talked about. And then the last thing on the agenda is Reston Town Center. So any questions, comments? Oh, and I do have one change on the agenda. It was pointed out to me that we left out an update. So we want to add in energy and environment. So, all right, perfect. Yeah, thank you, Jose. So let's don't forget that. Any other changes to the agenda before we get started? Okay, then let's dive right in. Economic development. Gary, do you want to give us an update on status there?
Yes, I have a draft that Charles Kapoor and I are working on, getting close to sending it out and coordinating with the equity section. So trying to coordinate with everybody and getting close to getting that out to everybody. So hopefully you'll see it before the 4th of July. This week.
Okay. Thank you, Gary. Any questions for Gary? All right, then let's move to parks and open space. Jennifer, are you?
Yes.
Okay, great. Can you give us a report on that?
Sure, and Jose, if you have a second to give me sharing, then I can share the agenda from the meeting with the group. But if not, I'll just read through our notes from our last session, and we're meeting again tomorrow evening. If anyone wants to join, you're welcome to, but everyone who volunteered to join has a link to that meeting. So what we decided to do is, instead of focusing on the actual text of the chapter, to really come up with a list of things where we've heard various opinions in the task force group. So we came up with 3 different issues. One is what kind of rules do we want to use for parks, recreation, and open space? And we had some reference material, and we did decide that the standard should be different between the TSA areas and the traditional Reston areas when it comes to things like the sizing of recreational spaces. And so we have some notes of things that we'd like to see in the chapter, but we did come to consensus on that, so we're not asking for a vote on it this evening. Number 2 is what community organizations get listed in the plan and what's the reason for their inclusion. So we have some reference to some clean language that we can look at options with. We talked about how the different neighborhoods are served, and we decided to leave in the intro paragraph the information about the various community nonprofits, I guess you could say, or I guess YMCA is technically not a nonprofit, but it's sitting on someone's land.
On county land,
just,
actually.
on county land. I knew it was in
Yes, it
someone's
is.
land. So we decided to leave references to those in the intro paragraphs, but to not talk about them later in the chapter. So they're more for reference sake. Then our third major topic was on facilities, and we had this split out into several different categories, and we didn't make it all the way through this topic, but in general, we decided to, instead of listing facilities as individual items, the group had consensus to list them as whole units. So for instance, if we wanted a pool and an athletic field in the same place, that we would list it as one item versus 2 separate items in the plan. Which is currently how it is in the current version of the chapter, so there's not much change there. We talked about whether we have a priority list, and we decided not to have a priority list. Do facilities only and Reston proper get listed, or the county-wide facilities also get listed? So these are like Lake Fairfax Park is adjacent to Reston proper, but not in Reston proper. The consensus there was that those should be in the Fairfax County wide plan, but not in the specific Reston plan, unless we're creating linkages from Reston proper to those other parks. But they would obviously show up on maps that we might have within the plan itself, but not to have text or wish lists related to them. Number D, related to Barron Cameron Park, or the sports tourism facility concept, is on the list for tomorrow night. And then there is a list of an inclusive list of what we think are most all of the parks, recreation, open space amenities that are already in Reston. So we decided to add that to an appendix of the plan, but not in the text of the plan. But we also know that it could be referenced for use in the economic development chapter. And Gary will give an update on that later, but there could be a need for the same list, both in for the parks, open space, and rec chapter as for economic development. So we decided to list that as an appendix. We have not talked about allocation of funds. That's for tomorrow night. Turf fields is for tomorrow night. The golf course language will be the same language that was in the current version of the plan versus some of the new language that we've seen in this version of the plan. And then we have for tomorrow night also trails to talk about, and how we fit trails between both the transportation section and this Parks Rec and open space section, make sure that they're complementary language, or how do we decide which piece of trails go in which chapter, so that we definitely have them working together instead of working separately. And then we also came up with the topic of talking about civic plazas that are near metro stations, but that is on the list for tomorrow night. And then the homework for the group was to look at some of the graphics that are in the current plan, and also some that John Carter has looked up, and see if we like those graphics or if we have any recommendations for graphics. And then also to study things like the Barron Cameron Master Plan versus the Sports Tourism Plan. And then to look at different links for the recreation standards, so that we can finalize or tweak any last things that we have for item number 1. So that is our update.
All right, Jennifer, thank you very much. Any questions for Jennifer?
Can I quickly butt in here?
Yeah, Tammy.
Richard Cabellos is trapped in attendees. He's a task force member and he can't be unmuted.
All right, thank you, Tammy. We'll bring him up. And by the way, there is a comment from Richard in the chat, so related to this as well. And he just said thank you. All right, thank you, Tammy. Other comments or questions for Jennifer?
I'll just comment, as Jennifer referenced, we're looking at that appendix in the economic development chapter that she just talked about, which can be a big asset as we go forward, along with things that have been mentioned past, website for Reston and so forth. So,
Okay,
thank you.
good. Thank you, Gary.
Mark Malcolm, I have
Yeah, Mark.
one question. Given that this is dealing with the open space, there is, from the existing comprehensive plan, discussion regarding a Herndon TSA having access to a wetland that's on private property. I didn't hear any discussion toward that. It may be linked with trails, because that was the intent of a couple of planning zoning commission decisions regarding one of the properties, WG Smith. But should that be addressed with this particular effort? Jennifer?
We can put it on the list for tomorrow night to have a discussion with the group for sure. I've edited the open space chapter now like 9 times, and I don't believe that I don't believe that I've seen much of any language regarding that wetland, but it has been mentioned in the task force, so it's probably good. Unless Tammy has it in the environmental section, maybe?
Well, one of the reasons for doing so is because of the existing comprehensive plan, of it being a walking or feature to the Herndon TSA. And that's the reason for the inclusions, particularly with trails and such. Thank you.
Yep, we will put it on the list for tomorrow night.
FYI, it is in the environmental section.
Very good. All right, Tammy, thank you. Other questions, comments for Jennifer? Okay, and one footnote, not for this group as an action item, just an FYI. I did learn over the weekend that the school board voted, I believe, last week to have the school auditor do a review of community use of public school facilities, recreation facilities. So anyway, you may be hearing about that over the coming months, but just as an FYI.
Okay.
Other questions, comments on Jennifer and that group? All right, thank you. Good work, Jennifer. Keep going. And we have housing next. Jose, who is giving the housing report?
I believe David Vanel is on.
David, okay.
Yes,
David, are you?
I can give you a little bit of an update.
Okay, please.
St. Clair Williams is working hard to find a time that I can meet with the affordable housing team, staff affordable housing team. My approach to this is, and I think it's going to be this week. I hope it's going to be this week. My approach to this is I want to, from my own reading and from conversation with them, I want to better understand the issues surrounding workforce and affordable housing in Reston and in the county. What kind of regulatory and legislative issues surround current and new approaches to these two types of housings, as well as senior housing, and where the county staff and county leadership is headed, if you will, on these issues. Goals are, I don't have anything written yet because I haven't met with anybody, and I just got a bunch of my own scribbles. So my goals, though, are trying to figure out, I think, frankly, that there's a lot of interesting, useful, good, headed in the right direction verbiage in what I read from county so far. I want to try to figure out how we can, for example, guarantee preservation of the existing housing supply, expansion of availability of workforce and affordable and senior housing availability, maybe perhaps tighten language in the comprehensive plan to deal with all those things. And obviously, we don't want any net loss of affordability and net loss of availability in housing. The county strategic plan for housing looks frankly pretty good, but new production and preservation and land use policies and regulatory action and finance mechanisms, I want to make myself smarter on all those things before I put pen to paper. So if I can get a meeting with county staff this week, I should have something, at least a draft in writing, hopefully by next meeting, or if not, the meeting after that.
David, thank you so much for doing this. You've really taken the tail by the tiger. This is a particularly complicated area of planning, and thank you for jumping into this.
You're welcome.
Supervisor, this is St.
Yes,
Clair
St.
Williams. So yes, we're trying to get that meeting with Mr. Vanell scheduled for this week, hopefully Wednesday or Thursday. And I just wanted to add that our affordable housing team will be coming back to the task force at the July 6th meeting. So they'll also be providing their, some information based on requests they received following their last presentation. So they will be coming to speak to the larger task force as well.
Okay, very good. Tammy, I see your hand up. Is that for this?
Yeah, yes, please.
Okay, go ahead.
David, did anybody volunteer to help you on your committee?
Crickets.
Oh, geez. Come on, guys. People who haven't written a bunch, please help. Everybody has to pitch in. We're under the gun here. And the affordable housing is a very important, so is public facilities. And it's a complex thing. And keeping what we've got is a huge challenge. And that doesn't cover WDU or new construction. That's keeping what is there. So please, people, sign up to help with this. Thank you.
Tammy, this is Mark. David and I are talking on Thursday, I believe, of this week to chat about this. But I guess one question I have for Walter is, what are we doing relative to the housing preservation plan language that is under discussion now at a county-wide level? Are we trying to go different from that, same as that? How are we? Because I recognize that there are county-wide efforts underway to deal with this issue, and I don't want to duplicate efforts given the scope of what we have to do here in just Reston. I'd be concerned about duplicating those efforts and dedicating resources where we don't need to if it's being addressed countywide.
Yeah, Mark, I think there's some at least general language that could be taken from the countywide discussions that are going on. But there may also be some preservation language that's more Reston specific. So I would recommend to be inspired by the discussion going on countywide. But if there is language that is specific to Reston and makes sense to you all to go ahead and, run with it.
Okay.
And will next week's presentation go over what you and Mark just talked about, Supervisor Alcorn? Is that going to be discussed at all next week when the presentation is made?
St. Clair, I believe that can be part of the presentation, right, from the housing folks?
So yeah, I think the folks have their presentation that they plan to provide, and I think there'd be opportunity then, yes, to have any follow-up discussion and discuss, anything that Mr. Vernell and Mr. Looney want to discuss following following their discussions.
Yeah, St. Clair, if you could ask them to include a slide or two on the discussions on the countywide preservation strategy.
Yep.
Because I think there's some pretty straightforward language we could probably include and live from that.
And I'll just respond to Tammy. I'm overloaded here, but I'll do a little bit to help you, David. Something you need, I'll just try and help you a little bit.
Thank you, Gary. Okay, any other comments, questions on housing? John, Looney, I see your hand is up.
Thank you. I had mentioned this once before, and I just threw it back into the hopper. I read a book that I can't lay my hand on this evening, but the thesis of that book, based on a review of a successful long-term affordable housing programs, both internationally and in the United States, the argument is that the only way you can assure that long-term maintenance of affordable housing is by controlling the land on which it is built. That increasing land prices are one of the things that most frequently disrupts the maintenance of affordable housing. I'd mentioned it once before, months ago, and if you're interested, David, I will try to find that citation. And it lists various case studies throughout the world and in the United States. Interestingly, also in Burlington, Vermont, when Bernie Sanders was mayor there.
Yes, by all means, John. I would really like to have that citation and whatever link you can give me to it. If I could make one additional comment about Walter and Mark 6 changes. I'm not terribly tied to the idea that what is good for the county is good for Reston. So I'm not looking to mirror necessarily. Maybe the county's approach countywide is exactly what Reston needs. But if we can get more percentage, if we can get more funding, if we can get a higher percentage of affordable or workforce housing for a given FAR, I'm all for that. Now, again, there's regulatory issues and probably some kind of legislative stuff or state approval or whatever, but I'm not, I'm looking to make sure that we get the best possible deal, if you will, for affordable and workforce housing and senior living.
Yeah, David, I appreciate you saying that, and I totally agree. I think the piece that Mark and I were talking about is the more narrow piece on preservation language. So it's basically how do we basically, and in some ways I think we are actually ahead of that in Reston. We just don't have, we have very little language in the current Reston comprehensive plan that addresses preservation. So again, if you've been inspired by, the discussion countywide or anything in there, use it. Otherwise, go with something that's just Reston only. That's okay too. So,
yes, sir.
Great. Thank you, David. Any other questions on housing?
Yeah, a couple of comments from me, perhaps. John Carter.
John.
This divides itself in a lot of different areas, and these are Reston specific, I would say. One is the inclusionary zoning. So this is the approach to WDUs and ADUs. And when the county was creating the recent changes, what I think a lot of people forget is they have a range in there for the tiers. And we could pick anything within that range and on up. So providing we're satisfying our developer concerns. So we don't have to pick again, this is my perspective, we don't have to pick the bottom of the range, and I don't think we should. So inclusionary zoning is a major part. The next, of course, the county builds affordable housing, and we have a couple opportunities to do that. The Herndon Monroe area, which we're going to talk about tonight, RTC North, perhaps, and there might be other. I can't think of any right offhand, but there might be other county land where we might point the document towards building some affordable housing there. And then the third is retaining existing affordable housing. We have a lot in Reston. I took a tour of Reston again this weekend. It's interesting what we have, but we have two approaches that are starting. One is in the village centers, where we took the pressure off the adjacent housing in the village centers and put development pressure more on the commercial area. So that's a form of preserving affordable housing in the village centers. And we know we have a couple of them with particular senior housing in them. And we know a couple of them that at least have WDUs in them. So that's one approach, which would be Reston specific. And the second one is our approach to the multifamily housing. We're kind of sticking to the previous land use map, which kept the density around 20 units per acre in almost all the multifamily housing, which gives most of those, and maybe all of them, are not built quite to the maximum density. So they have an opportunity to add a little bit of housing, which helps preserve. This is the famous Vantage Hill example, where they want to sell a little piece of their land, take the funds and pour it into the existing housing so they can retain the viability of the existing affordable housing. So anyway, that's three approaches: inclusionary zoning, the county building, and then the third is our approach in the village centers and the multifamily areas. That's a pretty robust program, I think, or at least the start of one for Reston. And probably all within the parameters that we have to play with.
Yeah, good points, John. And I think one or two of those we've made some progress on, but we do have a lot more work to do on all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, John. Any other questions or comments on housing?
I have one.
Oh, yes, Tammy.
Yes, John was wonderful in mentioning existing county owned, and the Crescent is another one to put in that, the Crescent apartment complex. So we definitely don't want to forget that.
Good point, Tammy. Thank you. Very good.
That's a good point.
All right. Other comments, questions on housing?
Yeah, I didn't know. I put in the chat. I don't know if this is the book that John Looney was referencing, but The Business of Affordable Housing, and it's 10 Developers' Perspectives. I don't know, John, if that was the book that you were mentioning, but just throwing that out there.
Actually, it isn't. I finally laid my hands on it. It is a chapter in the book called The Resilience Imperative: Cooperative Transitions to Steady State Economy. And anyway, there's a chapter about uniting the I and the we, the affordable housing in perpetuity. And it's by having either public trusts or nonprofit trusts for the land on which the housing is built. I will make a copy of this, and actually I'll send it to everybody. I'll make a PDF of it and send it to everybody.
Thank you, John.
All right, very
Thanks,
good.
John.
Very good input. David, thank you again for stepping up on this. Jerry, thank you for helping out, and everyone else. If there's nothing else on housing, let's go to equity and community health. Michelle, can you give us an update on those?
Hi. Yes. Let's see. So we met last Monday when the whole task force had a break. We met and we're still trying to figure out where the equity language and section would go, and if it should be its own chapter. And so that's one thing that we're discussing, and to decide on some more final language on the equity section. And then we also started discussing community health and are working through the different areas identified for community health that we would want to see included in the chapter.
Michelle, thank you. Questions, comments for Michelle in the Equity and Community Health subgroup?
John, this is David Fennell. I have a question. We talked, actually, you mentioned some weeks ago, I think I had talked about expanding the community health unit here in Reston near your offices. And you said something about the budget's coming up. Do you have any information to share with us about possible expansion of community health budget, either in Reston or countywide?
David, I don't have any more information unless does anyone else have on the call?
I mean, we can go back and look at what happened to that in the budget. I mean, Supervisor Alcorn's people and so forth. I don't remember what you're referring to directly, David, but I think, you know, there's always the attempt to expand that, but I don't either remember exactly, you know, what happened to that.
Yeah, we certainly, with the pandemic, we just went through a massive increase in public health activity. That's now starting to scale back, and you know, the school health nurses are going back into the schools, and you know, there are a number of things starting to get back to, you know, quote unquote normal. But there were some community health related things, and David, feel free to follow up with Michelle, and if there's anything my office can do to get additional information, happy to do so.
Thank you.
I'm sure that you all saw the chat that Charles Colby asked, does the affordable housing section cover homeless shelters? I was going to respond and say that I didn't think so, but it's probably something for the for Walter, for you to answer.
Well, it could go there, or probably public facilities, you know, one or the other, or maybe both. I don't know.
I would think affordable housing section is different than the homeless shelters, because I think of affordable housing as residential and homeless shelters as being civic.
Yeah.
The only thing I might add to that is that in the presentation back in March by the Affordable Housing Group, they did cite a statistic about the percentage of people who move into affordable housing that come from the homeless.
Right.
Obviously, it's two separate kinds of things, but there is a linkage there. There are efforts to get homeless people into affordable housing.
Absolutely.
I don't know what the criteria is, but there is that link.
Yeah.
Also a tie-in with community health, especially if we're thinking about too, you know, some of the hypothermic shelters, and then also when we need heat shelters too.
Yeah, that's a good point, Michelle.
Yeah, I'm just thinking more from, you know, whether it falls into a civic category or residential in terms of calculating density.
Okay, got it, Lynn. Good question. John Looney, do you have your hand up, or is that for a previous comment? That may be for a previous one. Okay. Any other questions on equity and community health? Oh, John? You unmuted.
I was just acknowledging that you're right. I failed to put it down.
Okay, no problem. All right. Any more questions on equity and community health?
I
Okay,
don't have a
let's,
question. I just want to compliment the team and Jose for all the work that they've done. This is, I think, Walter, you've noticed the passion and the energy that goes into this committee. So I just find it invigorating and a great group of folks to work with. So thank you, Michelle,
Yeah,
for leading us.
yeah, thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Michelle. And well, Alvarez and Richard and Reston and everybody that's been part of that group. It is truly an area where this is cutting edge stuff in terms of the comprehensive plan in Fairfax County. So thank you all. This is very helpful.
And I'll
Great
just
stuff.
say I've been coordinating with them, Michelle, on economic development. They're very passionate, want to do the right thing. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and if I could just add, I think that this is one of the areas where we do have staff members at Fairfax County that do have quite a bit of knowledge and experience that they can bring to the table on this topic. So, and yeah, it's,
All right.
thanks.
Thank you,
And I
Lynn.
would say that we need that experience. I think
Right.
that is where this group is struggling, because when Michelle and I, this was way back before the task force started and we started talking about community health. I felt like we had the structure of what should go in community health, but until we know, for instance, how many hospital beds you need for a community of our size or things like that, it is very difficult to fill in the gaps of what we have without either Fairfax County wide statistics or Reston specific statistics. And I'm starting to get to the point where I feel like if they're not available or the staff can't help us get specific statistics, then we might have to start recommending that we do some type of health impact assessment, because we can't make up stuff and we don't know where to get it from a task force perspective.
Yeah, good points, Jennifer. And I believe county staff is still searching around. We do have a healthcare advisory board that's been looking at some of these issues over the years. So I haven't given up on getting the data, but let's see.
This is going to be incredibly important too. Tonight, as we're looking at Reston Town Center North and some of the areas that Inova currently owns, and just asking, how are we going to meet demand, or how are we going to meet the need when we're talking about adding a substantial number of people?
All right, very good. Thank you, Michelle. Other questions, comments on equity and community health? All right, then let's move on. Let's keep going. Public facilities. And who's giving that update?
Yes, I can.
Charles, can you give us that update, Charles?
Yes, I can give an update with, and Jose can jump in if he has anything to add here. Essentially, I've stepped up to take responsibility for this. And I have have just talked to, I haven't really accomplished much yet, but spoke to Jose. I have the plan from last time. And my steps going forward are to get input. We might reach out to stakeholders such as the emergency, fire, police, and the school system on potential needs or issues there. And I was also going to try to get the help from an expert on developing plans. Perhaps I could get some time with you, Commissioner Carter, to talk about this. And then if anyone wants to be involved, I don't know if this needs to be a committee, but if people are interested in working on this as a committee, I'd be happy to accommodate that, or I can just proceed with putting something together and then throwing it out to the group. That's where we are right now.
Very good. Thank you very much, Charles. Any questions or comments for Charles? Tammy, do you have your hand up?
Yes, please. Charles, do check also with water and sewer. we are always told, and I've been doing this for over a dozen years, well, don't worry about it. We got plenty of water and we got plenty of sewer. Well, McLean just had their plan. I guess has it been approved, Walter? I'm not sure. That
It was the
McLean-
week I was out. Yes.
Okay, so I noticed reading that the Blue Plains sewer plant that normally our sewage goes to is stopping that relationship. They're at capacity, and McLean is going to have their sewage
Right.
treated in Loudoun County. This tells me we have to pay attention to what we're doing in Reston because we're between Loudoun and McLean, right?
Mhm.
And where's our stuff going, you know? So I'm very concerned that we're cavalier about water and sewer. And I just want to say really briefly that the Far West was thrilled, and I'm not sure exactly whether it was Flagstaff, Arizona, or what Far West community. They got a whole bunch of data centers. Oh man, they're in Fat City, just like Loudoun is right now. And all of a sudden they're in a drought situation. Well, those data centers take enormous quantities of water to cool. And now Flagstaff or whatever community it is can't wait to get rid of those things because they have no water for their people. So this being, you know, we're undergoing climate change and we don't even know what kind of meteor is coming at us. So we do need to check with public facilities to see really what is the realistic and not just this, don't worry about it, we'll handle it. That's not smart. And Reston's biophilic and we want to catch it all. So thank you for taking that on.
That's a good consideration. That's important. Learning there's a lot more public facilities than I had considered here. And the only thing I can, and I'm not sure how it connects to the master plan, but I am a comprehensive plan. I am concerned though, if we need more schools or police or fire rescue, that there's locations for those. That might be an issue.
Sounds very good, Charles. Yes, definitely communicate with other task force members and county staff on that. Great. Very good. Tammy, thank you for your comments on that. Yeah, I think it is important that we don't take things like clean water for granted. You never know. Okay, other comments, questions on public facilities? All right, then energy and environment. Tammy, do you want to take that or Bill?
Sure, I can do it. It'll be brief.
All right, that's okay.
And I apologize. Well, maybe, you're happy that you can't see me. My computer says another application is using my camera. I don't know if it's the Russians or who, but in any event, Tammy and I had a lengthy and very productive conversation with Joe Gorney and several others, some of his colleagues, and we have another one coming up this week, and maybe it's two, and at least one coming up this week. So we are moving ahead with some useful input from the staff. Tammy, you want to add? Actually, one other thing let me throw something out, and this is not really a report, but as we're drafting and we were told that we ought to be using will and something else, I happen to notice in ZMOD that ZMOD is very clear that shall and must are the right terms if you want to require something. So if we could get some further guidance from you, Walter, or from the staff, that would be helpful.
Yeah, perhaps I know that DPD staff on the line, but perhaps if there's something in writing, I don't know if there's a style guide for the comprehensive plan. If anybody's ever written that up, that could be helpful.
I thought we already went through that earlier, and
yes,
we decided, came to a decision.
Well, we went through it earlier, but when I was looking at ZMOD yesterday to try and research some of this stuff, section 9100 has a set of definitions and terms, and it was very clear that shall and must are the right terms if you want to compel something. That's all.
Yeah, Bill, I think the difference is ZMOD is the zoning ordinance and comprehensive plan is the comprehensive plan and guidance.
Yes, Supervisor Alcorn, this is St. Clair.
I think must is way too strong.
No, Jan, it's will and must. Barbara Byron has helped us with this
Yeah.
twice.
Okay,
Will
well,
and must. And it's not manners. It's not white gloves and pearls. This is what the attorneys will support. So I love you to death. I want you at my tea party, but this isn't tea party stuff. So another thing on the environmental chapter, wonderful meetings with staff. The more we learn, the more questions I have. We're going over stormwater management, and I'm trying to write a tree plan for Reston. So those are the two things that we're honing carefully, and I compliment Bill for his leadership. Thank you.
All right, very good. St. Clair, did you want to add something to that?
Yes, I was just going to add, I think it was already mentioned, but yes, the difference is the zoning ordinance is basically that's law. So those are regulations, we can, more prescriptive than the comprehensive plan. So that's reason for this, why there's a different language in the zoning ordinance than the comp plan.
Okay, very good. Tammy, thank you for making it clear too. That's very helpful. All right, any more questions on energy and environment section? Okay, then before we go on to the next item on the agenda, Jose, I know this is not on the agenda, but Jose, you have put together basically a compilation of existing drafts, and I think you sent that out. Can you either maybe put that up or just give everybody a very brief overview so I think everyone can start to see how this is kind of coming together?
Yeah, happy to, Supervisor. So basically what I started doing was compiling some of what the task force has been working on and the versions that I've received. So if this isn't an updated version, it's okay. This document is supposed to be updated as needed. So kind of made a quick table of contents with and there's no particular organization of each of the topics, but I just wanted to put them out there, like land use, transportation, and parks and open space, since those were like the big main three ones that we've discussed so far. And then we have housing. So just generally, as you go through that document that I sent out last Friday, you'll see that either you'll see like a date, like what version it is, or that if it's in progress or is it in process, one of those two words. So as you'll see, this document will continue to grow, and see we have a pretty big word count here. But if you need to go to the heritage resources, which we'll be discussing later today, you can easily just jump to this section, and it says that Chris Daniel was working on it. And then I kind of put like a date expected. I know we'll discuss this today, but it'll show kind of more of a clean version of his edits. And I think it's just a way that the group can kind of see how these sections talk to each other as the task force wraps up. So
thank God you know about how using Word and the table of contents features and the style guides. That's fabulous, Jose.
I thank the Virginia Tech School for helping me with that. Thank you.
Very good.
All right, wonderful. Any questions or comments on the formatting and the beginnings of the compilation of these different sections? Okay. All right, then, Jose, let's jump back into the agenda. Thank you, everybody, for all those updates, all the work that's going on. A lot of really good stuff underway. So next, Jose, I believe we have
yeah, we have
public art. There it is. Okay. All right. Jose, take it away, or if you're handing it off, that's fine too.
I could take it away, but I'll definitely ask Bill Penniman and Tammy for help in between, since I received 2 additional Word docs. I think one was sent through the listserv, but the other one was may have not got through the listserv. So I'm going to put up Tammy's version that I'll send out through the listserv after we get the discussion. But the way that Tammy kind of took Bill's comments and wanted to strengthen some of the language, as you can see on this first bullet, the should to can and stuff like that. So generally, not too many changes, just more formatting. And then I think both one of the main changes outside of IPAR to Public Art Reston was the implementation of the Reston Public Arts Master Plan being in the recommendations. So as you can see in this area in purple. So Bill and Tammy, if I hopefully I provided a brief synopsis, but if you had any additional comments, I think this is where the document, this is the latest version of the document that I know Tammy had worked on. And I'm also happy to take comments from the group too.
Yeah, I just basically took the good work that Bill did and shortened up the language and put some bullets in so it's easy to read. It can be diverse. Here's the formats. It's a pretty simple chapter. Thank God. It's one page. Thank God. We want to be succinct. And I think Bill did a really good job.
And so did you, Tammy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Bill, did you have any other comments?
No, actually, I just got Tammy's revisions, which on first glance look fine. She and I may have further discussions, but no, I think we're very close.
Okay.
You were fine.
Oh. Well, any other comments from the group?
If I could offer something, I think we've mentioned this, or I've mentioned this before. The proffers that guide what a developer is encouraged or discouraged from doing seem to me to be a bit limply worded, and I think it would behoove us to try to come to some kind of a general guideline for how public art proffers are written into a developer's proposal.
David, can you be more specific as to what it is you're looking for? I mean, they don't put pictures in, they just say, we're going to spend this much, we're going to hire an artist and we'll do something. But what more are you looking for?
I guess, without trying to wordsmith it here, I guess what I'm looking for is an approach to writing a proffer that keeps the developer focused on a proper and fulsome rendition of public art on their property. As it's worded now, I know there's examples of public art that came through in a development and absolutely nothing has been done about it. So I think what I'm looking for is a way to word the proffer so that if the developer agrees to it, there's no out. There's no it's not a cudgel that you hit them with, but it's focusing them on how to engage local or national artists in producing something that has staying power, that is interesting to look at or controversial to look at. That's certainly a function of art, and not kind of duck under something. Well, we couldn't find anything, or we're going to put up some sort of semblance of, well, this could be art, so let's put this up. I'm not being very fluent in my thought here, but that's kind of how I feel.
No, I get it, David. Tammy, you have your hand up.
Yes, please. I had two specific things that when I was reworking Bill's good edits, one was in an answer to David's question about how do you write a proffer to the staff, is that appropriate for a comp plan? I thought about that too. And then I have a follow-up, but does the staff know, is the comp plan the place for proffer instruction? Or is it that we make our comp plan so specific that the staff reviewing makes anyway, staff,
Yeah,
please help us.
Tammy, yeah, that's a great question. Proffer guidance, did we used to do that, or question for DPD staff? Did that go in the comp plan, or is that a separate thing?
So again, Chris Krebs, you can jump in if I'm incorrect here, but the proffers are part of the implementation process. So again, usually that's not something that would be specifically addressed in the comprehensive plan. Again, it's, having the vision, the recommendations, the goals in the plan that then helps staff have the discussions with the applicant on, developing the appropriate proffers to address, all the recommendations.
What? Go ahead.
Chris Caperton from Planning and Development, just to chime in and to affirm what St. Clair said. The proffers are attached to the approved development plan, so they do not exist separate from that approved plan. And the comprehensive plan should only provide guidance as to areas of interest or focus, but it wouldn't provide specific guidance for a specific developer's proffers. That is not language that we see in the comprehensive plan.
Okay, so as a follow-up to that, I have a question for Mark Looney. And this came up with the developer doing the property where Wegmans is. And that firm is very well known for having fabulous art in their projects. And I was like, when I was writing this or editing it, I was like, oh, are we making toward the end of this? If you can scroll up a little bit, Jose, so we can see the end. It's very short. There we go. Thank you. I was concerned about making that particular developer come through par. But I thought, well, even if they have fabulous art, I don't want to inhibit somebody who's going to go above and beyond and has incredible imagination. And I just want to know from Mark Looney, do you think this is okay, the way this is written? Or would you have a suggestion for allowing more creativity, but still having par have the knowledge of what's going in and how they respond to it? I don't want too many fingers in artistic pies.
Right.
That kills it. So I was just curious.
I get what you're saying, Tammy. So I don't know whether Rich Fernicola is on the phone tonight, but Brookfield is the one who is developing that, and they have a separate company within Brookfield, or a separate division within Brookfield, that focuses just on programming and public art as part of their projects. And that entity, Arts Brookfield, has been coordinating with Public Art Reston on what they're intending to do and with the overall objective of the program. I think a service that Public Art Reston provides is that they recognize that not every project is the same, and the level of public art that you're going to provide within a project is going to vary based on the size of the project, its location, its visibility, the number of people that are around it, and the elements of the design that could be shaped into a public art component. And so, at least in all of the projects I've been involved in, to the extent that there is outside participation or outside direction, meaning from the client's perspective on how they would implement the public art, they talk to Public Art Reston to be able to understand what's been done previously, because Public Art Reston keeps a great inventory of different art around the community. And so you know what's been done and what hasn't been done and what was successful and what wasn't successful. And they're trying to at least just understand the ground on which, or the foundation on which this is going to come. So as a general concept, I think it's great to consult with Public Art Reston. I think it's fine to have an expectation that projects provide the public art. I just worry when we start prescribing exactly the methodology of how they're going to do that within the comprehensive plan, because not every site is going to have the same extent of public art included based on a whole host of factors. And the Public Art Reston folks have been really good about recognizing that and trying to work with individual projects and individual developers based on their unique circumstances and their emphasis. Some companies have a greater emphasis on this than others. I think what you're trying to ensure is some minimum level of participation in the process, understanding that, you know, people emphasize different things based on each project that they do.
This is Rich. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Sorry, I'm having trouble getting off mute there. Let me add a little more color, Tammy, as to what Arts Brookfield does for communities. And, you know, I think it goes beyond just art in general. You know, the programming is very varied. It does provide public art. It provides programming which includes dance, music, you know, still art, moving art, a whole host of programming, which I think you could all classify all of those as some form of artwork. So it is very varied, and we certainly will program our open spaces on a very regular basis. So I think, you know, maybe Mark and I take a step back and speak to the Arts Brookfield colleagues and get their thoughts on some of this language. I looked at it initially. I thought it was good, but maybe we could put some additional emphasis on, you know, what we can bring to the table at our site. And we will definitely engage the local arts community when we program Haley Rise, which is our site with the Wegmans. I hope that helps.
Thank you. That's huge.
Yeah, thank you, Rich. That's very helpful. I do see, Jan, do you have your hand up? Jan, you're muted. Looking there. Let's see. Oh, I see other hand up as well. Jan, we'll come back to you if you still want to talk. Gary Moffat. Gary.
I just want to say that I think, you know, we went through this before, and Tammy and Bill have done, you know, great work in adding to it in the conversation here. We're very close, and I just wonder what we can do to kind of bring this home, because we're right at the edge.
Yeah.
Here.
Time-wise, we need it fast.
Right, and so I heard you know, Mark and the Brookfield person talk, and it almost looks like we're right there. The mail was answered on what needs to be there, and any other comments about how we could just kind of almost complete this pretty quickly.
I mean, this is Bill. I just suggest, rather than debate it further tonight, anybody who has comments or suggestions, email them to Tammy and me, and we'll finish it up.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Any final comments before we move on?
I was just going to ask, as an option, would it be possible for us to, since we're so, I mean, we are here at the conclusion of this chapter, is there any way of us just voting to accept this chapter and put it to bed and let's move on?
This is Bill. We could do that, but we were just told that we were going to get some additional input from the Brookfield and others. So.
But I don't think Brookfield was saying anything differently than what we're trying to do. They were just talking about specifics that I'm not sure is directly related to how we would phrase this. I guess turning back over to Mark and the other Mark in terms of what he thinks.
If I can jump in here, people haven't had a chance. This is only a couple paragraphs, but it just came out. I don't even think it went out over listserv. Let's give the task force a chance to look at it. The next week we can finalize it.
Okay, I'm
So
sorry. I thought this had gone
Yeah.
out. Sorry.
No, it didn't come out. Bill's did, mine did not. I don't think it's fair to have
I agree.
authorship.
I like the enthusiasm, Lynn.
I'm a driver. I want to get it done.
Next week, we're
Yeah,
gonna
too.
put the check on this.
Okay.
Any last comments?
The way it is, yeah.
Okay, great.
Mark,
Any
back a
final,
little
Mark,
bit.
did you have a comment? Yes.
Yes. Toward the end, the paragraph that deals with the visual and performing arts element of the policy plan, does that give a set of principles of what should be considered with the public art? And the reason I say that is, one, I haven't gone back to look at it, but the thing is, what we've done earlier is we've had a set of principles regarding Reston. And I hate to bring it forward for those who do not like Arlington County, Virginia, but they have a set of principles that align very much on public art, that align with way Reston thinks. And I'm not sure what's in that portion of the policy plan of Fairfax, but the principles that deal with public art in Arlington County do very much apply here. And borrowing from them. There are 7 principles on that. And it's sort of like with public art. We don't mention that with Reston, that a public art should also reflect Reston's diverse historic and cultural resources and a couple of other things that I don't believe are in the Fairfax thing. Anyway, I'll try to work a comment toward bringing that forward. Thank you.
All right,
Can you
thank you,
send
Mark.
those, Mark? Can you send that if you know it? Just send it to us.
I'm going to pull a web page and
Okay.
you can see it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So this is Bill. Let me just say, Public Art Reston has been an extraordinary organization that has been at work for a long time to come up with standards and ideas specific to us. And I don't think this group on short notice wants to try and step in and rewrite that because we like Arlington better or something, but I'll leave that to the group to decide.
Okay, all right, thank you, Bill. Any last comments? Okay, Bill, Tammy, thank you very much. Appreciate everybody's input on this. Let's move on. We have heritage resources. And Chris, are you?
Hopefully you all can hear me.
Oh, there you are. Yes. Hey, Chris.
Howdy, everyone. Hello from
Take it
the
away.
Outer Banks. Jose shared the updated heritage resource section. I'll try to keep it short and sweet since there weren't a lot of revisions made to this. One of the major changes where there were some updates made to some of the figures, in particular, the listing of known heritage resources. County staff helped me update that, as well as I provided some more clarifying terms so that the Sunset Hills, A. Smith, Bowman House, it's more clearly understood what that was referring to in the county's listing. As well, the USGS, which we've talked about in the past, is a listed property, is also considered a heritage resource. It's a federal property, so there's very little authority we have over it, but it bared listing. Just a side comment, Jan, I know you gave me comments again, but somehow you got a hold of the old version. And so I made all the comments you provided previously. And so they are all hopefully corrected in this version. I emailed it back out just to make sure you can see it. So I don't know how that happened, but Jose has the current version. So if you want to check it again, just to be certain, please let me know. But otherwise, we didn't get a lot of additional feedback. Jose, if you want to go a little further down, we added a nice little map that shows all the known heritage resources. I'm going to point out that these are the heritage resources listed on the county's inventory. There are plenty of other properties that have been identified as historic or maybe eligible, but unless they're listed in the county inventory, they don't show up on this map. So this is a very county specific map. Go down a little further, Jose. In addition, we have the map showing the areas in Reston that have been surveyed for historic properties. County staff and I are still trying to find the perfect information for this one because we don't want to make it confusing, but we also don't want to make it a line list of all the potential properties looked at because that's too overwhelming of information, a little too invasive. So we're trying to say, here are the areas where we've looked. Here are the areas where we think there may be, we know there are fairly certainly properties. And as you can see, there's a lot of Reston that has not had survey work done on it. So there's a lot of places that future opportunities were. So I've snuck some language in this that kind of prioritizes that for the county. That'll hopefully help county staff when they have to go back and say, hey, we do need to do more work to identify heritage resources. Maybe the plan will help support their initiatives there. Beyond that, I don't think I received any other really substantial comments that weren't easily addressed through minor editorial changes. That's about all I have, I think, at the moment.
Chris, first of all,
oh, go ahead.
Chris,
Sorry.
thank you for doing this from the Outer Banks. We really appreciate that. I can hear the waves crashing behind you, but thank you. Tammy, I did see your hand up.
Yes, please. Chris, are you including the Hunt Club and the maybe cemetery down?
Those are identified properties and should be showing up on that second map.
It's not within the Reston border.
Okay.
Working on land use, I checked that, and it's right outside of the Reston border. Some of the cemetery may actually be in the backyard of some of the townhouses that are in Reston, but because they're not located yet, that area is not Reston within its border. Obviously, we want them protected, but I don't think it's in the venue of this plan. Thank you.
Yeah, and I talked with Denise Dressel County staff about that, and she said that was actually something that they had prioritized tracking in documents. So that was a conversation. If it's not shown here, you're right. If it falls outside our zone, then it won't be on that map.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Tammy. Other questions for Chris or other comments?
Just a great job by Chris.
Sir, I do have a question.
Yes, Gary.
No, I was just saying it was a great job. It's just.
Okay, sorry. I thought you said you had a question too. Thank you.
I do, Walter.
Comment.
John Mooney.
Yes, John, please.
Yes. First of all, I agree with Gary that this is a great job, as I said last time. I do have a question on, I believe it's page 5, Chris. When you presented it last time, you said you may get some resistance on the idea of being flexible in the calculation of proposed FAR for adaptive reuse of historical properties. I did not find a red line version of your new version, so I couldn't tell this for sure. But did you adjust that language at all on page 5?
I have let that language stand as it is and have heard no pushback, though there could be murmurings in the halls of the Fairfax County Government Center, but that's hard to say. I tried to leave it as open-ended as possible so that it wasn't trying to tie itself to a number or something, but merely recognizing that there could be flexibility granted, because I didn't want to take it any further than that. And I thought maybe if there was someone who had a more vision in that, they would come at me with some kind of a revision. Or, I mean, obviously county staff may opine on it too at a later date and say that this is not tenable, but I have not heard anything as of this point.
Yeah. I don't have a definite position on it, but the fact that it is not bounded in any way leads to some concern on my part.
Could I add to that? Because I wonder too, if we're going to think about any type of density outside of what is planned, if we should look at that a bit holistically, because it might be that there's other areas of the plan too where we have to make considerations to get what we think the community would want or need. And so I wonder if we should take all of that in together in some fashion.
All right, Michelle, good thought. And I see actually a couple other hands up. I see Lynn and Dan, and then Jennifer.
Thank you, Walter. Chris, fabulous job on this chapter for historic preservation. I did want to let you know that I am planning on sending comments in based on our last conversation, that anyone is able to identify any property for historic preservation. And based on the windshield report that we received, there are 2 properties in Reston that have a common denominator, and it is our golf courses that were both designed by a renowned golf course architect. So I will be sending that content to you, Chris, for consideration for this chapter.
Absolutely. Look forward to seeing it.
His name is Ed Alt. And for those of you who haven't heard this before, my dear departed mother-in-law went to high school with Ed Alt. But he is a renowned local golf course architect. So thank you.
All right, Lynn, thank you. And then Jan, and then Jennifer.
Okay, so I did mark it up, but I was at work and I didn't send it to myself. So I don't have any way of sending it to everybody, the proper version markup. But I remember looking through this and wondering if we could add some stronger language about if they do develop these heritage resources, that they don't go into high rises, so they don't go overboard, that you have a sense about the integrity, and I appreciate that, but just a little more control over how high a building might be modified for use. There are no controls right now. You've left it open-ended for a reason, but that was my concern. Thank you, and it's a great job.
All right, Jan, thank you. Chris, are you, I think you're still muted. There we go.
Oh, I was gonna say thank you, Jan. I'll look for those comments and Lynn's too. So I'm happy to have them. And what I will say is, from my perspective, that if someone came with something to try to create a high rise on top of or build up a building, it probably would not fall into the categories of adaptive reuse and rehab, but we can definitely try to improve language in those spaces. I also had a sidebar conversation with one a commenter who was asking about properties and what they could or should be used for. I know there's a lot of sensitivity, particularly about properties like plantations and things being used for wedding events and stuff like that. Thankfully, the properties that we have in Reston right now that are heritage resources are being utilized in what I would say is a very positive manner. AFMA in particular utilizing the Bowman House and everything. They plan to keep that property within their stewardship, I think, for the long distant future. And I think that's probably those are the opportunities I want to look for, where we can find someone who says we can integrate this into our development. And so instead of it being lopped over and built completely anew, perhaps we can have a plan that has some innovation in it. So that's what I'm hoping to try to encourage somewhere in here. So obviously look forward to any of those suggestions coming in. Otherwise, it seems like in the majority of this section seems to be satisfactory to folks, with other than a few minor comments. So hopefully I won't bring back anything too extensive for future sessions.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you, Jan. Thank you, Chris. Let's go to Jennifer, and then afterwards we've got Bill Pinneman and Mark Mooney.
So my comments
Sorry,
were
Mark Looney. Sorry, Mark.
my comments are directly related to this bullet point on FAR. Because we do not have a specific list of or complete list of the heritage resources, I'm very leery of putting this in here.
We
because
do actually.
I thought that you said that it was
so
not in the plan. Okay.
That's why this term is so confusing. So that table at the very top that Jose originally showed, those are the only known heritage resources in Reston as it stands that are listed on the county inventory of historic sites. There are historic properties that have been determined to be eligible, but until the History Commission or the owner actually submits them to be listed on the county's inventory, they aren't on this list you see here. So
right. So that's my fear.
Much smaller quantity.
Yeah. So that's my fear is what if there are found ones and we don't know what those would be, and therefore we don't know if they're ones that we want to protect. So I asked last time if there are other ways that we can incentivize. So I'm interested to see if the county staff came back with other options. But if there are not, I would say unless we have specific ones that we want to save as a group, then we only limit any potential increase in FAR to those that are really, really special to us.
And Walter, this is Mark. Let me, because my question is
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
related to not the same issue, but a somewhat related issue, which is I want to understand from Chris how you envision this being implemented in the real world. And what I mean by that is, let's assume that I have a site that is identified as a potential site, but hasn't yet been submitted. I come forward with the development proposal. What is the applicant in that proposal anticipated or expected to do in relation to what you have in here? And let's say I'm not coming forward with one that's already been identified and it's not on your map of potential sites. What is it that you're expecting the applicant to do? And how is it going to be reviewed? Because to Jennifer's point, I'll take a similar but somewhat different position, which is if it's not been identified yet as being historic and so therefore worthy of protection on the official list, what is it that I can tell clients you want them to do in the context of this, or more importantly, what you don't want them to do in this context?
Absolutely. So we've got a few things I would want to unpack about that. One, the problem is that the county is woefully behind in identifying heritage resources. It does not prioritize that. And so we have situations like the API building and others where a building or property is considered important. And then at the last minute, the effort is made by the public and usually very industrious members to then say, this is something we should try to value. And so a developer in that situation is usually left in a bit of a surprise, obviously, because they may or may not know that the property that they are seeking to redevelop has something of importance on it. So there is a county deficiency that I don't think the plan itself can solve, hence why I tried to prioritize that. To your other question about, well, what if we did have one? What if we had one that could be and was about to be listed on the inventory? The inventory is just done for the History Commission. So, and the property owner, all they have to do is complete that application and they could have it listed. It could also be done by non-property owners, but it's a little bit more arduous of a process. My vision is in that situation is if there is a property like this, that if there is other development that there's being chosen to pursue on such a parcel, that if they choose to preserve, rehab, and adaptively reuse that property, it's granting them additional flexibility on their other aspects of their development. Because what I see normally is one of these properties that could be a potential property falls into a parcel for development and it is obliterated. There is no incentive to keep it. There is no, even if there is community desire to keep it. And so if there is even the remote opportunity to suggest to a developer that a property could be of value if it could be reused. And I want to point out that I use key terms in there: preservation, rehabilitation, and adaptive reuse. They do not denote things like building it 10 stories taller. they want the building or structure to remain as is and be used in a new fashion potentially, but still be the structure. That was the idea, is if that could happen, if that opportunity could occur, then I want to find a way to encourage it. And I took a stab at what I thought might be a way to do that.
Right. So let me follow up on that then, and suggest that it's also quite conceivable that people that don't want to see development at all will opportunistically label something as historic in an effort to prevent the redevelopment, even if it's otherwise in conformance with the comprehensive plan. And so my question is, if I have a site that either has been identified as a potential or hasn't yet been identified as a potential, and I come through the process, are you expecting that the applicant will prepare a heritage resources analysis for the development site as a precondition to the zoning application, number one? Because we do that now in the context of historic in the sense of Civil War or Native American heritage.
Yeah, and archaeological studies.
Not 40 years old, and it just so happens to be older than my kids, and so therefore it's potentially historic, right? I mean, I'm wondering how are we implementing this on the backside? Because I fully anticipate that at some point, some project that otherwise doesn't have anything other than the fact that it's old is going to get tagged with this expectation, and we're going to end up in a fight with somebody, you or the staff or the history commission or somebody, about whether there has to be an analysis done, what the analysis is supposed to show, and what the results are going to mean from this. And so I'm really trying to figure out, like, how are we implementing this in the real world? Because it's great to say we want to preserve it, but I got to advise clients, what can you expect when you come through the process? And I'm not clear from this what the expectations are.
So as it stands right now, there is a list of those buildings on that table that currently this could even apply to. That table at the very beginning, that is it. That I said heritage resources, those are the known heritage resources in Reston. So those are the only places right now, were there to be some type of development that could in any way pursue as what I wrote right there. If there is a potentially historic property, as the ones we've identified in the recent Reston surveys, they have to go through the process involving the county's history commission to actually be formally listed on that inventory of sites. That has to be a nomination has to be prepared. It has to be submitted. It has to be voted on. It's not something a commission I serve on. So there is no burden placed on a developer to do that in that sentence and that I provided down there. There is no expectation to do that.
Right, I get that. I guess what's the next tier down, the blue outlines on the map. Like if I'm coming forward with an application and a property is within one of those blue areas, what's the expectation for the applicant coming through the process?
Honestly, want me to be completely frank? I want them to just be aware of the fact that someone's looked there, because in most cases, when development comes through, that letter, whether or not it's even been cared about, is usually not even a consideration. This is extra information that the developer usually doesn't even have to say, hey, has there been any surveys in my area for built environment? I'd rather them be armed with that information to know, hey, there actually may very well be. Perhaps it would behoove you to seek out more input from county staff and look into how that might constrain your design. Because just because the plan itself doesn't say there's any inhibitors on that, as we saw with the API building, the public can get pretty frustrated about that. And so the more of these properties that are considered, it's a kind of an awareness tool is what I'm trying to provide some help for.
Okay, because I'm just looking at the other bullets, and it seems to suggest that if you fall into these categories or this category, there's a host of things that you're expected to do. And what I'm trying to figure out is, like, are these applying just to those that are the half a dozen that have been identified to date, or are we applying these standards to everything that's been identified as a potential site?
I only use the term heritage resources.
Okay.
The thing is, even if a property is listed as a heritage resource, there's nothing in the comp plan that stops a developer from raising the ground it's on for historic buildings. It may be for other parts of the comp plan that could be halted, but unless it's in Lake Ann in the historic overlay district, there is really no mechanism to say those properties cannot be demolished. There are steps that you might have to go through, including documenting them, which is what the county requires. But beyond that, there's no teeth. The
Okay.
historic overlay districts are the only place that have any authority, which is the Architecture Review Board. Obviously, there are other laws that can take place, and that we could have a whole conversation about Association Drive and how other laws weigh in there. But in this case, the comp plan, I'm designing to say, hey, I would encourage you to do this. I want to try to look favorably upon folks that look at properties that are historic, but in no way put a thou shalt.
That's helpful, because I know there's a number of the P&Z committee members are on here, and I want to make sure that we all have the same understanding of sort of how this will unfold in the real world. So thanks.
No problem.
I
All
think
right,
that there may be people showing up for these types of applications that may not otherwise show up to defend properties. That's all.
All right.
I think another thing that might bear pointing out is that there are several areas in Reston that are the PRC areas, like the actual individual communities themselves, the clusters, that obviously we don't see any development changes happening in them, and could likely one day choose to make themselves heritage resources if they so chose to. That would obviously continue to try to benefit and provide protection for them. But again, this is trying to incentivize when there are those opportunities. That's about it, not create a roadblock.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chris, Mark. We do have several hands still up, and let's keep moving. Jan, did you have anything else?
Oh, me? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, I just was wondering if we could either have heritage resources in the master plan, the comprehensive plan, or preserve the ones, the buildings that are listed in the chart. I think all of those buildings should be protected. I think they're all important. If we could somehow put them in the master plan, either with this section or just as a chart, I think that's important. But I think it should be in the master plan that we want to protect these because they're important. That's my take it.
And I would love to protect every one of these, the ones listed here, Jan. Some of them, though, are in the hands of individuals who obviously could make their own decisions. Thankfully, for most of them, those folks want to keep maintaining those buildings. But I've learned to grow with this with my profession, that I don't have a lot of no's I can tell folks, but I want to try to find as many opportunities to offer folks.
Okay. Thank you, Jan. Bill, I see your hand up, and Jennifer, I believe too.
Okay, I'll be quick. Chris, this thing reads very well, but I do have a couple of comments, and I may send you an email with some additional ones. But on the topic you were just discussing with Mark, which I think on page 5, the second bullet, I think you need to clarify that so that the phrase you're talking about, significant heritage resources, have been recorded, just so it's clearer to average people, because even Mark is confused by it. Make it clear that it's the county or state or some official recognition. And I'll leave the wording to you to do that, but I think that's your intent. The second thing is the bullet above that, perhaps could use some modification. Any development or ground disturbance in Reston requires on public or private land. Well, I dig holes in my lot. My wife gardens. I built a wall. I mean, there are things that's a little broad, and you might want to give
That's actually that's from the original plan too. That's not new language.
Well, I get common sense.
I agree. It is. It made me pause too, because I'm like, well, I did ground disturbance right before I left to go on vacation in the backyard, putting in plants. So
Well, I won't turn you in, but if you could just,
And this
if
is
there's
kind of
some
something
wording you
that
could get.
I think Mark was talking about too, that obviously there is usually an archaeological study required for a lot of work. And I'm happy to work with staff to try to make this a little bit more clear so that someone doesn't feel like we're policing their post-hole digging.
Thank you.
All right,
That's it for
thank you,
tonight.
Bill. Thank you, Bill. The last hand I see up is John Mooney.
Thank you, Walter. I just would like to take a sounding of the task force. Thus far, I've only heard really Jennifer and me express concern about the second sub-bullet there about the granting flexibility in the overall calculation of FAR for those who preserve, rehabilitate, or adaptively reuse heritage resource. First of all, I, for one, have always strongly supported preservation, rehabilitation, and adaptive reuse of heritage resources. I saved a train station once in Albion, Michigan. However, it's the unbounded nature of the flexibility and calculation of that FAR that concerns me. And I think Jennifer has expressed a similar concern. And I would just like to take it, no one else has spoken to that. Are we the only ones concerned about that?
All right, others have same concern?
No.
I was wondering, I wonder if this isn't better in a zoning ordinance rather than in a comp plan. It's the zoning ordinance that provides flexibility on probably many of the zones. Well, it does or it doesn't provide, but it's unusual for a comp plan to provide that.
I'm just trying to be radical here, John.
Yeah.
I'm happy that John. I'm happy that folks brought it up, because when it went through the first time, I didn't hear anything. And like I said, I wanted healthy debate on it, because I don't want it to be unbounded. I don't want someone to exploit it either. But I'm trying to find whatever way possible when there are heritage resources to encourage the considered reuse and preservation of them as part of any development when that happens. And if this needs to be reined in, I am more than happy to rein it in. I wrote it unreined, basically, in the hopes that I would get some insight from many of y'all who have a lot more experience in this. And I'm happy to turn it into things like may or put limiters on it as well. I just want to find every avenue I can to suggest to folks that if there are these properties that we do value, if a developer has their by rights ability to do things there, which could include removing it, I want to offer them opportunities to say, well, what if we pursued these options? Could we sweeten the deal in some way? But I don't want to do it in a way that goes against what Reston's aiming at either. So I'm open-minded to this discussion on it. I really am.
Chris, this is Bill. My suggestion would be to say may be considered or something like that. That just throws it into the realm of negotiation with no presumption. And I don't think I agree with John on it not being common in comp plans. It's certainly in the existing comp plan that there are additional FAR incentives sometimes. So, but in any event, if you say may, maybe that's soft enough for people.
I was thinking about May before you even said it, and that's kind of what I was kind of going at. And I would fight John too about the zoning ordinance too. John's been on the ARB with me, and so he knows I wanted to find ways to incentivize this in the comp plan, because the ordinance, while it's a wonderful tool, it takes a lot of lifting to get that stuff built into that.
All right, thank you, Chris. David Vanell, I see your hand up. Do you want to go? And actually, did I miss somebody?
I don't think Jennifer ever got a chance to talk, though she said.
Jennifer, I'm sorry. Yeah, go right ahead, Jennifer, and then David.
I just want to give a quick example. So if we add the golf courses as heritage resources eventually, is everybody okay with giving them some additional density? Right? So that's that's a very easy example of how
would they preserve, rehabilitate them?
Right, how a heritage resource might be added to the list in the future. We don't know what that list is. People can can apply to these, and as long as they get approved, are we okay with any of them getting FAR?
No.
But would that plan preserve, rehabilitate, and adaptively reuse the golf course? Because if it won't, then it wouldn't meet this qualification. If it's not going to preserve, the golf course is a heritage resource, and it's going to remove it, then that's not preserving it. So it would be disqualified from that FAR benefit.
Right, but I'm pretty sure that Looney or any attorney is going to be able to say that they're going to put some density on a golf course and still be able to use it as a golf course. So that's my fear, and that's an extreme version of my fear, but that's the fear here.
When the golf courses were established initially, density moved elsewhere. There is no density available on the open space golf courses.
All right, thank David. You're on.
Yeah, just one quick note regarding John's comment about the zoning ordinance. I don't see why. First of all, I think what Chris has done here does belong in the comp plan, but I see no reason why it can't be. You know, some of the more prescriptive things in Chris's writing can't be shoveled over to the zoning ordinance, and the rest of it stay here. I think, and that each document refer to the other regarding these heritage resources.
Okay, thank you, David. We do need to move on. Any final comments? I still see a couple of hands up.
I just want to say that David's idea is what I was thinking of. List the heritage resources in the comp plan. I think that's very important to do that. But when you come to the mechanics, that's something else altogether. I think that needs to be listed separately.
All right, Fan, thank you. And Bill, did you have a final comment?
No, I forgot to take my hand and I apologize.
Okay, all right, well, very good. Chris, do you have everything you need? I don't know if you'd be making any additional edits.
Yeah, no, I think I got a bunch of robust conversation about it. So thank you everybody for all the feedback you've all provided. That was what I was looking for. So I'm glad it fermented inside of y'all for a little while. I will go back and see if I can make some changes.
All right, fantastic. Chris, thank you. Thank you for doing this from the Outer Banks too. And we all appreciate that. And tell your family we appreciate it too. So let's move on. We have a couple of additional things we want to try to get to tonight. The next is back into land use and remaining TSA areas. And we have the Herndon TSA. It's actually, I guess, half of the Herndon TSA, the Fairfax County side of it. John Carter, do you want to lead us through that? John, are you on?
Yeah, do you see, oh, hold on.
Oh, there we go. Hey, John.
Hello, I'm just checking this. Oh, okay. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Right, all right. So,
Could it be a little bigger? Oh, there it is. Never mind.
yeah. So if you can disregard the circles and just look at the colors, this is a good map. So you can see each of the transit stations has density limit. Those numbers are the FAR allowance. So if we concentrate on the Herndon Monroe station, I listed all the information. So Pole Field's number 1. So that's completed. There isn't much to say about that. It gives you a flavor that this has a hodgepodge of zoning all over the place in it. And I'm sure that was appropriate at the time. It still is appropriate. In terms of the Fairfax County parcel, that's number 2 there. It looks like it's about 28 acres. It has 1.5 or 2.5 as the FAR. And it's in the 50% residential, 50% non-residential category. It probably ought to emphasize affordable housing, at least obviously the housing portion of it. And then below that, the one FAR produces roughly 768 units and a little over 900,000 commercial. The upper end, the 2.5, is almost 1,300 residential units and 1,500 non-residential. The problem with this site, it's got a lot of constraints on it. It's close to the toll road, so there's a noise issue. And it's got 2 large parking garages, which we're going to take up a lot of footprint that's available. And then the Woodland Park area is the area remaining, and what you're going to see on the next slide. So that's the Woodland Park area, if you can see my cursor. Largely developed or under development or approved. Now, what you see in the text, the blue is the county-owned land, and the orange is the entire Herndon Monroe area. If you remember the last time we discussed this, there were several comments, and I've tried to just put the comments right in underneath. And so these would be turned into text for this area. So one of the comments was, hey, this is a business area during the day, but it's a community at night, and it ought to have those facilities that would support both. One of the things that was mentioned before is this notion of collaboration between properties for recreation. There's not a lot of space for recreation in, particularly in the TSA area, but there are some ball fields there today. And then to the left, the little star, that is Arrowbrook Park, which is a pretty fabulous park, really. And then down below is the McNair Elementary School. So perhaps if different developers get together, we might be able to have a sort of smaller gathering place theme and other recreation themes. Whether they could get together and provide a bigger one, I'm not so sure because of the way the land is cut up at this point. Another big issue is this mobility. So we need to get this road system to work. There is a pretty good road system in the plan today, and we might clean it up a little bit, but you can see the black lines. And probably most important is, and I don't know whether this is even possible, over there by the metro station. So to get Woodland Park over to the metro station, we're challenged in every metro station to get pedestrians to actually get to the metro station. And then not only do we want to get to the metro station, we want to get over here to McNair Elementary and to Arrowbrook. Getting across these streets will perhaps be a challenge, but there are intersections there, so it might be possible. Then, in terms of our biophilic community, there's a lot of trees there. This is the wetlands that people have been talking about. There's also a stormwater management pond on the edge of the county-owned property over here. So tree preservation is an important aspect, as well as tree planting and tree canopy, and then the wetland protection, and then stormwater management. Most of this is more recent, so stormwater management at least has been addressed partly. So environment, and if Bill Penniman and Tammy Petrine are able to come up with the forest conservation plan for Reston, maybe some of those words could apply, not just the county-owned property, but the whole area. And then finally is the energy green neighborhood guidelines. So we have green buildings and charging stations and other techniques like that. So this is the plan. I really didn't propose changing the level of development since it's mostly occurred. And I didn't really want to change the county land since they've been kind of used to that. I do think any development on the county land is going to have a major challenge, both in terms of the environmental issues, that stormwater management pond, and just those footprints of those parking garages. So I doubt that we'll get to the limits, but we'll see. And if we do get to the limits, it ought to be targeted, at least in part, towards affordable housing. So are there any comments?
John, thank you. I see Mark Malcolm has his hand up, and then David Vanell.
Good.
want to appreciate everything that you presented. With the regarding the county property where you have the dark dash, the black dash line,
Yes.
that is an existing walkway that was part of the proffer for what appears to be the undeveloped land to the west of Monroe Street. That is actually about 10 feet wide, and it's a lighted pathway, and it's excellent condition. But against the original against the 2018 comprehensive plan, it was also the potential to have a road that would be able to get the office residential density. With the existing comprehensive plan, it called for greater residential than the 2.5 FAR. It called for 2,100 units in that portion of the property. What you did not address in this, and it doesn't really, it is because it's further in the future, the Sprint parcel that is to the east or right side also had a very high density of development, of mixed use development that you didn't address this evening.
See the 1.5 there.
Yes. Then last, for everyone else to be aware of, for the Woodland Park East, on the prior, well, on the slide that follows this one, that is nearly fully reaching full development except for 2 office buildings.
Right.
On the upper side, there was to be to the west side a 14-story and to the east side an 18-story. Buildings have been approved for planning purposes. Whether they ever get built or not, that's a different story. But with that, what is directly against Monroe Street is what looks to be a square. That's the Ian apartment complex of over 500 apartments. And then what's in the rest of to the west side, what looks undeveloped, those are almost entirely townhomes. They're over 50% developed now.
Yeah.
Anyway, with that, there's a little bit of pocket park type stuff that's in that area. And then also what was in the Great Oaks area, there are a couple of more baseball fields that are in there. But in the center of the Great Oaks are what is the office park area. Also proved around what 2015, 2016 was the potential basically for a small town type center, just to refresh people's memory. The real the biggest point I want to make is, even though it's a stormwater thing now for the remainder of the county property, this is one of the key areas that has the potential for workforce dwelling unit type development, as well as an office building that might be for a national headquarters. I know I've talked with Supervisor Alcorn about those types of ideas, as opposed to ball fields, which I've also mentioned in the past. But relative to any issue that comes with Reston Town Center North and residential development, this is one metro stop away, and as county controlled property, and like that earlier discussion that we had about who controls the land controls the use, and I believe John Mooney brought forward, this is a perfect example. And it's yet to be seen whether the huge amount of parking that exists, whether the older structure, which had concrete issues 10 years after it's built, and it's approaching yet another period in which it may need some rehab, that's the potential of increasing the use of this property for density development that supports. It is buffered from polo fields in terms, if you had to do high rises, only if there's access to this property off of Monroe Street. You'll see that with the polo fields, its primary entrances to the bulk are on Sunrise Valley Drive, with an access point also to Fox Mill. And then there are about 3 smaller sections, smaller sets of houses that are streets off of Sunrise Valley Drive. So that brings the last point that I wish to bring forward, that if there is a strong consideration for development of the density in the Board of Supervisors property, the county has to consider early to develop that entryway off of Monroe Street to alleviate the pressure off of Sunrise Valley Drive to service the metro. Thank you for your time.
I agree with that. I've got all that. Why don't you, if you don't mind, we'll put this to words and then give you a chance to look at it one more time, which is going to be true in all these areas.
Yeah, yeah, Mark, if you could work with John on maybe cleaning up some of the existing comp plan language, some of the things that you mentioned, that would be really helpful.
Appreciate that, because the disconnect was on the total amount of development versus the FAR. And even if there is a need to increase the FAR for potential, given that other ways that other access to metro, it would help alleviate Polo Fields residents' concern, though I cannot speak for all of Polo Fields. I'm just simply one resident there.
Their concern for access is what you're talking about.
Their concern is how do you alleviate traffic off of Sunrise Valley Drive so that Polo Fields has access.
And that's the Herndon Monroe connection, or the
That's
Herndon
the Herndon
Monroe
Monroe
Street.
connection
Yeah.
impacts.
Yeah, Monroe
When
Street.
When the
Monroe
bus station got closed down, there were buses going through Polo Fields, creating traffic hazard problems beyond the other ones that have been discussed more recently.
I can see the bypass right here.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody
Mark.
else?
Gary, I see your hand up. Do you want to go?
Yeah, I just want to talk about the access to the metro station. I know it is what it is, but should not we be addressing that limited, difficult access as we go talking about finalizing this comprehensive plan?
Absolutely. It's one of my favorite topics, as Walter knows. But I like that idea of emphasizing the connection to Monroe Street, that it would be vehicular as well as pedestrian connection. It provides another way out. And I don't know whether there's another way to get there from off of Sunrise. I'm not sure that's a good idea, but the east-west connections will be important too, particularly from that parcel on the east that Mark was talking about. But yeah, providing safe and secure and just functional pedestrian access to metro stations is just an awful challenge in Reston, and well, other areas too, but particularly in Reston.
But how do we do that for you just made suggestions, John.
Well, we're going to put it right in we'll put it in the comp plan.
I understand. Okay, but don't we need to be a little more specific? Maybe I'm off here. Mark Malcolm may want to jump into this, but
it just takes some consideration of the language. It's just like the earlier discussion this evening, the wetland that's also to the south of the western side of the Board of Supervisors property, that is private land, and it's not a park, though the Reston Association map identifies that from its historical point before 2010 on that. And there is no, those two sets of properties, the JBG Smith property, the Massachusetts Mutual through its subsidiaries property, do not authorize people to park on their parcels to be able to walk into that. But also hidden, there is about 40 townhomes yet to be built at Pulte, starting in 3-4 months, that will be in that parcel to the south of Board of Supervisors. Anyway.
Yeah, thank you.
I understand. It just takes thoughts.
I guess I keep thinking about our walkability, the pedestrian, bicycle, we're trying to strike balance with, cars and so forth, but this harms, us getting to where we really want to go. So I'm just throwing that in.
Yeah, the last little piece is this section of Sunrise Valley is one of about 4 sections of Sunrise Valley for having the bicycle cycleway. And that's been on hold through this section for being presented by the county since 2018. It's been on hold for over two years. I mean, when it went from in-road to off-road for
Yeah, Mark.
bicycle. Well, yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I wanted to see, it looks like Tammy has her hand up and we do need to move on, but Tammy, go ahead.
I would like to discuss this next time because we do need to move on. But I have a whole bunch to say about this. So.
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
So it is 8:58. We traditionally have tried to wrap up by 9 o'clock. We have one more item on the agenda, and actually we have, I guess, another half item and then an item. John, did you want to finish off to see if there are any other areas besides Reston Town Center North, which is on the agenda, that folks wanted to flag? John, I know this is something, I think we've covered basically all the areas, talked about the village centers, the convenience centers, town center, every center we can think of, the TSA areas. John, can you think of any, or can anyone else think of any other areas that need to be brought before this task force for review that we haven't covered yet?
I think there might be some on the Wheelie Station East, particularly on the south side. If we're going to promote a little bit of housing, what is a little bit? And I know I'm getting calls about that. So I'd like to share those with people before we start writing anything.
Okay, then John, why don't you let's plan on bringing that back next week. And in the meantime, if anybody can think of any other areas that need additional review like this, please contact Jose and or John, and we'll tee those up. So it's 8:59, and we do have. All right, so shall we head into Town Center North? I know there's a lot of discussion. We do have some folks here set up to do a presentation on that. I guess let's do this. Let's plan on at least going 15. Let's go 15 to 20 minutes over, if everybody is okay with that. And then I think what we're going to need to do is have Town Center come back, Town Center North, excuse me, come back again. So let's see. So John, or actually Jose, who do we have for Reston Town Center North?
We have Joan Beecham with DPWS.
Joan, can you do your presentation? And I've already heard from folks, had an office full of folks this afternoon. And so I want to have at least a little bit of discussion on this, but let's see if we can at least get the issues out on the table and have everyone thinking about things before the next meeting. So Joan, go right ahead.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Joan, we can see you. Oh, here we go.
We can see it.
There, that's
Okay.
it.
Yep, you're good.
So good evening. I'm Joan Beecham. I'm a project coordinator with the Department of Public Works, specifically the Building Design and Construction Division. I've been with the county about 9 years, and I'm a long-term resident of Reston. I'm gonna just say over 30 years. So I am joined this evening by two of my partners who represent ANOVA, Dave Sittler and Tim Sampson, as well as Rachel Flynn, the Deputy County Exec, is also on the line because she's provided a good deal of guidance on this, this project. So I would like to bring your attention to the map that comes right from the comprehensive plan of the Town Center North District. It is divided into two sub-districts. The pink area shows the East Fountain sub-district, which is where the Spectrum, the Paramount and Oak Park is. And I'm going to focus mostly on the West Fountain Drive sub-district, which is shown here in the blue striped area. And that is basically our project site that we are working on with ANOVA. So we'll talk about that project site after we talk about some of the comprehensive plan language. We'll review the current ownership, and I'll give you a very high level project background because it's a project that's has quite a bit of history. And we'll look at the updated concept plans and give you an idea of how this new concept plan has evolved. And then we'll end with the next steps. So as far as the comprehensive plan language, currently it calls for this area to be an extension of the town center urban core with a significant civic presence at an overall lower intensity. It talks about the tapering of the building heights from south to north and from east to west, so that it provides a transition from that urban core to the residential neighborhoods to the north and west. The plan talks about a major urban park and a community gathering space located in the middle as an organizing element and a key feature. And it gives us a mixed use area intensity of 0.9 for the non-residential. And then it mentions a minimum of 1,000 residential units. So we don't have a lot of suggestions, but some of our suggestions are that minimum residential unit is not very helpful. We would like to provide the clarity by giving it the maximum number of residential units based on the approved density that's in this area of 50 dwelling units per acre. The other challenge we have with some of the comprehensive plan language is that there are a lot of uses identified for this property, almost as if sometimes if you couldn't decide where it would be, you'll put it here. So we would really like to emphasize the public facilities, especially the existing facilities that need to be expanded or replaced. So at a minimum, we'd like to remove this area as the location for the Performing Arts Center. We know that that will be more successful if it's closer to the metro, and there is a project that has identified a location for that. And then we'd like to coordinate with the schools to add language about their potential site to be an urban model or a co-located facility, as they brought up when they did their presentation several weeks ago. In addition, we will add language to address the impacts on the existing residential development. We've come to understand that Paramount has some concerns. And then most importantly, we would like to insert the updated concept plan. So the plan here shown on the right is the existing plan that is currently in the comprehensive plan, which will be replaced. So this is the existing site, and starting from the upper right-hand corner, it contains the ANOVA emergency room here. Right in the center of the site is the Cameron Glen Nursing Home and Rehabilitation Center, which has been vacant for almost 6 years. And the last ANOVA site is the Sunrise Assisted Living. Continuing around clockwise, the county facilities are the Reston Regional Library, the Emery Rucker Shelter, the Reston Police Station and Governmental Center, and then the North County Human Service Center. The affordable housing that is here at the corner of the site, the corner of Town Center Parkway and Bowman Town Green, that property is owned by the Redevelopment Housing Authority. And while it is part of the North or the Reston Town Center North District, it is not part of our project with ANOVA. So this next slide gives you an idea of the current ownership and an insight into why the county and ANOVA have been working on the project for so long. The ANOVA property is shown with the blue mask, And you can see that the county and Inova own almost 50-50. So the county and Inova have began working on this project in 2010. So both Tim and Dave have reflected on their involvement with the first comprehensive plan amendment back in 2014. An official real estate exchange agreement was signed between Inova and the county in 2015, and it has been amended since. We partnered together in 2017 to submit our joint development plan based on that comprehensive plan sketch that I showed earlier. And as part of that development plan, when we started our community engagement, we encountered quite a bit of resistance from the DRB. So in 2018 and 2019, we had several workshops with the DRB to arrive at a approved concept plan in November of 2019. So I'm going to show you graphically what happened there. So this, again, is the comprehensive plan sketch that is currently in the comprehensive plan. It shows a much more urban type of development. This plan was developed and submitted as the zoning application that we put together in 2017 and 2018 that we encountered problems with. Through our work with the DRB, we arrived at this is our DRB approved concept plan. And since that time, the plan has been further refined to provide a larger central green in coordination with Supervisor Alcorn. So this is essentially the plan that we would like to insert in the comprehensive plan, assuming that it is approved, this amendment is approved by the DRB. So we do have plans to go to the Reston Design Review Board next month on the 20th of July. So the next slide is a slide right from the presentation for the DRB. We hope to keep it pretty simple as far as just asking for an amendment to our approved concept plan to show that we have a minor change in the street network, and that is to accommodate our larger central green. So our central green has essentially gone from 2.3 acres to 3.5 acres. And I'm referring to just this square here in the middle. So this is a larger view of that proposed plan, which I mentioned we intend to take to the Reston DRB next month. And assuming we get approval for that concept plan amendment, and following your work on the comprehensive plan, we'll get back to work on our development plan preparation. And that will include developing that central green design, updating our traffic studies, and again, a series of community meetings. I do want to point out that each one of these 8 blocks will come back in through the plan review process as well as the DRB process. They will come back in when they come in with the site plan and the building plans. So there will be plenty of time to review each one of these 8 blocks. And then finally, I'd like to just touch base on the county plans are very fluid, but the real estate exchange agreement does provide for these 3 blocks, block 2, 4, and 6 to be the Inova blocks, and the county will continue to own the blocks to the south and the west. Our priorities, of course, are for the library, and we currently see that as the jewel of this development, and we'd like to see it located directly across from the central green on block 5. We're looking at block 3 for the shelter. It would be an expanded shelter that would include supportive housing units, very similar to the model that we just completed at Bailey's Crossroads. We currently are identifying Block 1 as the site for the Fairfax County Rec Center. Again, as I said, the plans are very fluid, and our first step is to get through the development plan process so that we can exchange land with Inova, and then we can begin the work on each of the blocks. So with that, I'm going to conclude. We do have a pretty robust website, and we keep it up to date. The actual application for the Design Review Board will be posted there on July 6th.
Joan,
So with
thank you
that-
very much.
Yep.
Appreciate that. I see a couple hands up, and I know we're going into overtime here, but Gary and then Tammy. Gary, I think you're still muted. Oh, Gary took his hand down. Okay. Oh, no, there you
No,
go. Gary.
I'll go ahead and let Tammy go, and then we'll see, others, and then I'll.
Okay, Tammy, go ahead.
Thank you so much. What is missing and what is now in the comp plan under the county public facilities priorities are an elementary school. It is in the current comp plan. The people that were in Walter's office this afternoon would like to have the elementary school in blocks 1, 3, 5, 7, or 8. I spoke with a Fairfax County Public School second in charge. Her name was Jessica Gillis. I think she's been perhaps meeting with Joan, but she was adamant that they would love an elementary school, and they can do it on just about 5 acres or a little less. There are 3 in the county that have been done already, so we're excited about that. And we would encourage and beg the county, and we are the people who live here. We're the ones who care most. We're the ones who have been campaigning like the devil for our rec center, etc. There's nothing, I don't think we're at cross purposes, but we would like to be included in designing these blocks because we know what we need to have here and how it would work. I want to mention that Street D is not drawn on this map, but there's an alternate on Street D, which is an east-west between blocks 1 and 2, that has the street slightly angled to link up with Street A, which then can proceed out to Town Center Parkway going
Was that the
west.
slide before this one?
I don't know if I didn't see it before.
There was a pink.
No,
line.
I don't understand that. Slicing through the central green with that road makes no sense.
So Tammy, that alternate road was something that Inova looked into and has found that this is the better arrangement because of the grade. It would be an extremely steep grade.
Okay, well, then so be it. I don't think VDOT's gonna like this T situation, but maybe they can deal. We don't, Inova controls 2, 4, and 6, and we're good with that. We don't want to get in the way of screwing up Inova and what their plans are for those. But we do want to screw up with the county's planning for the rest of it. We want to screw up badly because we have vested interest here. We've been studying it. We've been begging for the library forever. And civic uses need to go in here. And we need to plan for the future, not for building as soon as possible. But we need that elementary school. They're excited to be in here and they can do it. So that is my basic comment. Thank you.
All right, Tammy, thank you. Lynn put her hand down. So Lynn, did you
I
want to
was
say something?
I was going to ask about the pink road that I noticed on a previous slide.
Oh.
So since Tammy had
So the road used to go through the park when the park was smaller. Now the road will go straight across to make the park larger.
Okay, I think I was looking at the road between blocks 1 and 2 up at the top, and why not go kind of more straight across rather than have that curve going down? That was all. Yeah, the
Okay, so is the
2021
pink
plan
road
has a road going
new?
through the green. So that doesn't seem.
This road here?
Yeah, the road between blocks 1 and 2. So this first.
Yeah, so the
road.
intent with that road is that it wouldn't be a VDOT road, that it would be a county road made of pavers, so that this all sort of reads a little more like a big park.
So pavers like permeable?
Yes.
Yep.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, and let me just throw in, this was one of the ideas that came from the discussion. I know there are a couple of folks, I think, on this call last November when we walked the site, and the interest was in having the central green, that playing field, and the rec center be able to be used as one large area, and so that road would be able to be closed off from time to time. That was the hope, anyway.
Well, I think that VDOT would probably prefer to have that road, which is, I guess, is Street D, go connect to the road right below Block 1 to go almost straight across to Town Center Parkway. Pavers or not.
This has been reviewed by the Fairfax County Department of Transportation, but we haven't taken it back to VDOT yet. So.
Thank you, Joan.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn. And we've got Dennis and Charles, and I know we're running over, but let's keep going, and we're going to bring this back for more discussion in a week or so. So Dennis, go right ahead.
Thank you, Walter. Joan, good to see you again.
Yes, nice to see you.
I won't repeat Tammy's comments, but I certainly support them. I will note as you look at this that the neighborhood that we're talking about over in Spectrum area, there's already approved 1,422 units, 775,000 square feet of retail and commercial. The 23-story building is going to go up there. And the Innova space. And I should be clear, you know, everything I say from this point forward doesn't involve the space that's created for Innova. That's for Innova and the county to work out. I'm talking only about 1, 3, 5, 7, and 8, which are the properties owned by the county. And as has been discussed, the original purpose, going back to the deed of trust, the original master plan is that these would be areas used for county services for the benefit of the local population. And I very strongly think that's what we should do. And we certainly have enough. And Joan, I didn't hear you mention the Human Services building. I don't know if you're planning on putting that in a different part of the county or what, but that needs to be replaced also as we go along there. To do this, and I think for the benefit of the entire area that we're talking about, these should be reserved for the county facilities and not for residential, with the exception that any transitory housing associated with the Emery Rucker is fine. But otherwise, we should not have residential or commercial in this area. I think that will improve the property value of all of the neighboring communities, starting with Innova. I think it will give us a nice, clean view, increase the green space all the way around. I think it's a big plus for everybody. So I'll stop. I have more, but I'll stop there because we're running out of time.
All right, Dennis, and thank you for being succinct. Charles.
Hello, just a quick question. I see you list the public facilities priorities. Where would the police be?
So the police station is currently located right here.
Where is that?
On Block 5, along, it's with the government center, and that's a relatively new building. I believe it was finished in 2014.
So that would be in the same as it is now.
Yes, it stays the
Okay,
same.
right.
Yes, no plans to develop that.
Thanks.
All right. Well, I know I'm going to thank everybody for their patience. I know we've run over. Let's continue this discussion. What I'd very much like for folks to do is if you could, put pen to paper, put your ideas on, Jones put some ideas here on how there might be some changes to the current comprehensive plan language. For example, going from a minimum number of units to a maximum number of units. Be thinking about this particular layout to replace the one that's currently in the comprehensive plan and any other text. I would encourage folks to contact either Joan or Jose, I guess, with ideas. And then let's see next week if we can come back and have some discussion about what the language for this Reston Town Center North should say in the comprehensive plan. Joan, can you come back next week?
I can, yes.
Okay, great.
Do we have copies of this presentation?
Jose, I believe you sent it out late this afternoon. Is that right?
Yeah, I sent it out to the task
Okay,
force around 5:04.
Okay.
Yeah, it was late.
Yeah.
But I sent it out. That's the good thing.
So if that works for everybody, and I see Jennifer has a question there about tree save. Let's see if we can pull together the suggestions and also the questions in the areas of concern, and have that robust discussion next week. Jose, can we fit that into the agenda next week, you think?
Yeah, I think we can.
Okay. All right. Any final questions or comments on this before we move on or adjourn? Okay, thank you, everybody. I know we've gone 24 minutes over. Broke my little rule, but that's not the first time. So
It was worth it.
no, thank you. It's some good information. Got to hear, give everybody a chance to be thinking about this, and get everybody ready for a full discussion next week. So thanks, everybody. We went through an awful lot this evening.
Thank you all.
Appreciate everybody hanging in there, and we're making progress. So thanks all.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Nice.